goddess, the Glastonbury goddess, and I bought it from a little shop round the corner from the tour.
Yeah, a lot of my friends have been going up to the tour. Of course, Amanda Lawrence lives up there,
Yes, she
and
does.
then and then her and Jim McCarty. After Jim McCarty was on my show, they ended up hooking up, and they've done a couple things together. Okay, we're live. Let's see if this is working. Yeah, a lot of my friends have been going up to the tour because Amanda Lawrence. Oh, that's me.
That's you.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Let's see. We got 5 and 7. It's going to go up a little bit. We're going to give you a minute or so. Hello, everybody. I'm not my normal self today, so I can't read all the names coming in. But we've got a great show today, and it's a special show. And Magenta doesn't even know why yet, but it's all good. There's no coincidences. So let me just say hello to Primi Christ. How you doing, Susan Anthony, Lisa Finelli, Robert Orth. Thank you for all your great posts. My brother, Michael Van Patten, Deborah Denori, Nasia Sia, Elizabeth Rudwick. Look forward to having you back on. Donna Gentilozzi. Amanda Lawrence is in the house. Rosie Neal's in the house. All right. So we got 20, and they're still coming. I can't keep up with them, but that's okay. Let me just say, too, if you guys, these shows resonate with you, please share. We've been suppressed a lot by Facebook and YouTube, which is going to lead me into another quick announcement. I believe this is if I'm not mistaken, this is our 680th show on this format in the last, I think, 17 months. And this is the second time we've had Magenta Pixie on, and it's a pleasure to have her on today. This may be the last show we do in this format. We may, from the next show onward, be doing everything from an independent website, which will eventually be available on a handheld. We're going to encourage, as we've talked to many people like Magenta, encourage them to join us and get out from under any type of, for lack of a better description, matrix controlled or constricted media. Our own server, our own signal, and our own URL shared by people like Magenta and Soulogy and so many of our other brothers and sisters been out there doing the work in groups so that we can begin to turn the corner on this 5D commerce and the new frequencies that we're all walking in now. So without further ado, let me just welcome the beautiful Magenta Pixie to Soul Speaks 5D again. Thank you so much for honoring us with your presence and shared space with us today.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you for asking me back. Love your shows. Lovely to be here. So thank you.
You're very welcome. I want to say, I've really noticed you put out a tremendous amount of work. I keep my eyes on everybody just because of video production, ideas. I like to see what people are doing, content, of course. But the magnitude of the volume of what you're putting out is just like, whoa, man! I thought I was a workhorse. And the other thing I wanted to say too, which I'd like to get into a little bit, I really admire you because you touch on some issues that not too many quote unquote light workers want to talk about. I admire the fact that you can talk on these issues. And also, I admire that because you do that from the standpoint of what really is. You were talking about sovereignty a minute ago. Really is sovereignty, and not to sound bad or harsh, but not caring what other people think. You're putting out the best that you can, the best information that you're getting. You're sharing it, and you're moving forward with it, and you're not looking back. And so that takes a lot of that takes some big etheric balls. It does. And so I just want to give you big props for that, because it takes a lot of guts.
Well, thank you. First of all, that's really nice of you to say you thought I was putting out a lot of work, because I actually thought perhaps I wasn't putting out enough. So that's good to hear. It's been Christmas, and I've kind of thought I would have liked to have done more, but you have family and that sort of thing, and more social events going on in December than normally. So I'm looking forward to getting back more into what I do now that Christmas is over. Yeah. And about me speaking about certain things that other light workers won't speak about, I think there are so many individuals who have these knowings within them, and if no one is speaking about them, it makes those individuals feel as though they're alone in their opinions. It may make them feel afraid and scared to voice their opinions, and somebody needs to say these things. Somebody needs to be able to speak, and as long as you speak accurately and in alignment with where you see your truth to the best of your ability with authenticity, then there's nothing to be afraid of when you do that. But I do understand it's difficult to get up and speak in front of people, and it's difficult to write statuses that lots and lots of people are going to comment on, especially when you know that they're going to be controversial. Yeah. When I first started studying spirituality, going back sort of around 1992, 1993, I started reading a few of these books that my brother had. I remember this book on Zen wisdom, and one of the things was to learn not to, it's not really that you don't care what other people think of you. It's so that you don't build your own approval from other people. And that's what we do when we come into this world. We seek the approval of others. And I understood very quickly what this piece of wisdom was trying to tell me, and put it into practice very quickly. I thought, that's what I'm supposed to do, and that was it.
Yeah, that's interesting, because back in my old corporate life, they used to talk about building silos, 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 like corn silos in a farm, those big, tall, cylinder-looking things. And I asked the guy, so what do you mean by that? He said, well, because a manager will build his own silo, his own following, and it only encompasses that little area that he or she has jurisdiction over. It doesn't work. So what you're saying is very, very true. I want to get into a little bit. I'll be frank about it. I'm also not one to be afraid to talk about things, but I really, really have been following your commentary and videos on the things in the political and world stage. And at first I was like, wow, what's she doing? And then I started to, then as I got to see more and more, because I could see the pure intent, there was no doubt about it. And of course, just very recently you put one out, and it was about Trump. And let me just give you my take on it, and tell me what you think, and add or subtract from it, because I'm not sure I got it exactly right. But the reason it really appealed to me is because you were speaking about, why do we have Trump? And then and really what you were talking about is, you were talking about a collective energy. You were talking about it from an energetic standpoint. You weren't talking about the superficial. You weren't talking about the egoic. You were talking about, from an energetic standpoint, this is a representation of where we're at. And it could be it could be something else, or it could be this, or it could be that, but this is where we're at. So don't get lost in the individual. Don't get lost in your politics, And I thought it was done very, very well. But I think that's really where you're going with this, even on the Kavanaugh stuff and that type of thing, is you're talking about, what are we looking at in the collective from our energetic eyes? Does that sound about right? What you were trying?
That's exactly right. Because as a person, I can be honest with you all, I don't really know that much about politics. It's not something I've studied. It's not something I've been interested in. It's not my area of expertise. What I see are the energy constructs, the energy bodies that individuals give off, if you like, the signal they give off, the matrix around them. And I see what that shows me regarding that person's emotions and behaviors and their goals, why they're doing things and how they interact with the environment and with others. And so that's where I'm coming from. And it's not just the individual, it's taking the overview of the whole planetary system, all of the collective consciousness on Earth. Why do we have this situation? It's taking the overview. And to be honest with you, it is the only way to really see the truth. Because if you stay in the ego, you are immersed. It's like being in a forest and wanting to see the tree at the end of the forest and see what that tree grows. What fruit does that tree bear? You can't see it because you're down in the forest. But if you climb the tree and you get to the very topmost branches and look over, then you can see the whole forest. That's the vantage point that you must take.
Yeah. And I know you've taken some hits for it. I know, but I just want to say again, thank you on behalf of everybody for continuing with that. And I just wanted to touch base on that because just in case anyone needed some clarity on what you're doing, because I do think it's a powerful thing. And I think we maybe even need to see more of that because we're going to see some more changes and stuff. It is kind of a fine line too, because we're moving into a place, and you brought up the word earlier that the nine's giving you a year of sovereignty. And, again, we were back at square one always, because it's always based on the individual. And it's either an internal solution or an external illusion. And whether that means someone's giving you a pacifier from the external to make your life better and think that everything's okay, such as financial reset or military tribunals or whatever the case is to correct everything, which in essence should follow suit with our internal work and our internal projections, right? But it is kind of a fine line in the way you put it out there to read this stuff energetically. I think is very important because we can't. It's almost impossible to turn our head away from what's going on or what's potentially being rectified. So I assume that you'll be digging into that a little bit more and more as time goes on.
That will depend on what is happening in real time on this planet. I won't go into things if I don't feel that there's a significance for that. It's very much like going with the flow of what's happening. And when something rises up before me that I see is a pivotal event and that there's a ripple event from that, then I will know to go into that. There is so much that needs to be spoken about with the work that I'm doing with the nine. So I do take my lead from them. But I would imagine from what is coming that me commenting on Trump, that was not the last comment I will be making. No. So I would imagine I would be delving into that some more because he is so significant as the president of the United States because of what he's representing, as you said, where we are collectively. That's an absolute representation. And this is why the nine are calling 2019 the year of sovereignty. The sovereignty is becoming sovereign ourselves. And it's an easy word to just say, but being sovereign actually entails so much. And it's not just about being sovereign individually. It's about the physical third dimensional realm mirroring that sovereignty. So we're becoming sovereign on a third dimensional level as well, which is very, very liberating. And it's what we all want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Regardless of where we place our faith, it's what we all want.
Now, when we were talking about sovereignty before the show, I had told you that Morgan had been calling the 2019 year of expansion. We kind of said, some of these words are synonymous. We both talked about the creative spark, the creation aspect of our potential of 2019. Can you talk a little bit to that? Do you feel like we've reached a point now, or at least some of us, where our creative abilities are really going to start to kick in? I will even say at a somewhat supernatural level.
Yes, that's exactly what 2019 is presenting to me. It's exactly what the nine have been talking to me about, especially over the last few days. It's what I've been seeing in dream time. So if you imagine we're coming into 2019, it's actually New Year's Eve tomorrow, and the next day we are at the beginning of 2019. So the question on the majority of individuals who see the wider picture, the awakened individuals, many will be asking, what's going to happen in 2019? What are we going to expect? What can we be looking forward to? Or, you know, is this going to happen? Is that going to happen? And when these questions are presented to the nine, what they've come back to me and said is, if you can change that question from what's going to happen in 2019 into a statement, and that statement is, we can create what we want to happen in 2019. That's the energy. So it's not really we change our question to a statement. What we're doing is we're changing the energy of questioning, which is, we don't know what's going to happen, please give us an answer, to we take our power and we create what we want. So that is why 2019, and it's been that way for many for a while. But with you said your friend mentioned the year of expansion, and I think collectively what's happening here is an expansion within the collective consciousness of the aware individuals. More and more people are joining that awareness. There's like this sort of ripple effect where an individual is non-awakened, and regardless of which area of life they go into, something, and often it is political, something triggers them into reevaluating what they thought was true. So they go out there to look to find out what these questions, the answers to these questions that they have, reevaluating their beliefs. And when they do that, they discover a whole new truth in front of them. And then they go to another level of awakening. And then those people stay there for a while. And we may know these individuals as truthers, if you like. These are the individuals that are aware of the control structure. They're aware of the cabal. They're aware of the whole Donald Trump cabal fight, if you like. But they kind of stay there. And there isn't any expansion beyond that. And for quite a long time, there's been a large group of people since before 2012, right up till now. There's been a large group of people remaining in that mindset, which I would say is fourth dimensional. Those individuals, there's a big wave moving from the fourth dimension into the fifth dimension. Those individuals are moving into awareness. It doesn't mean they're becoming spiritual, if you like. They're not going to suddenly start believing in unicorns and angels and talking about 5D. But what they're doing is integrating that frustration and anger and moving into that surrender and that acceptance in whatever way that may be. So that is where there is an expansion within the collective consciousness of humanity. There are more of us now, as well as an expansion occurring within our own fields and our own minds. And that expansion is very much this bilocational consciousness where we're able to see two opposing perspectives simultaneously, which, when there's a critical mass amount of individuals that think that way, it does create a bifurcation of timelines, this two-world split. That is, and has been for a while, tipping into this trilocational consciousness where we're embracing three different concepts, creating a trifurcation of timelines, and then that moves into the multi-locational consciousness, multification of timelines. That's kind of where we are. And that also applies to the DNA formation, from double helix to triple helix, to beyond the triple helix into the infinite helix. This is all really coming into awareness in this next year.
Yeah. There seems to be a big part of this is being totally vulnerable. And to me, and this has occurred for me in the last 10 days or so. And it's beyond surrender. You know, I mean, I spent a lot of time saying I surrender, but over the last few days, it's like I've let it all out, and it's felt like a natural, dance with the universe, and it's this vulnerability that, you said acceptance and allowance and surrender, but it's a place where you literally trust 100%, and you don't even have to think about what you desire, because it all matches you anyway, something like that. Do you think we'll see more of this type of frequency out there? I mean, or is this something that might be unique to me right now?
We will see more of it, because this is one of the stages of awakening, of ascension, of enlightenment. In the Bible, it says, suffer the little children to come unto me. And that is what that means. It's the vulnerability that you're talking about. It doesn't mean I will only take the children and I don't want adults. It is the child, the inner child, and that's the vulnerability. This is when you kind of go full circle and come back to this unity with Source. Source has an all-knowing component, but also has a innocence like a child, a vulnerability. Yeah. And we take the all-knowing, and we take the vulnerability as we mirror Source. That is part of that sort of God self-expression, if you like. So we will see more of that, because as we have this fourth dimensional shift from those truthers, if you like, moving from that mindset into more of an awareness, there's a ripple effect. And so those that are in the first harmonics of the fifth dimension will shift up to the middle harmonics of the fifth dimension, and so on and so forth. That's the awakening. There is no end to that awakening. But when we're looking at that awakening as a collective within our linear time, everything that you're experiencing is something that's being experienced in unique ways by, I don't have an actual figure, but we are looking at several million, if not up to 1.5 to 2 billion people, when you look at the actual individuals that have moved out of the mind control in one way or another. So it is a collective movement. We will see more of that.
I'm glad you said that, because I think sometimes people underestimate the number of people that are awake. And I think what I get from you is that just being conscious, just when a person just becomes conscious and says, hey, that's just not right. Hey, this is a control paradigm, or whatever the case is. That alone, that awareness alone, activates DNA or soul code, or whatever the case is. Now, another thing that's really starting to stand out to me in the work that I do and what I observe is what is true and what is not. And whether it be on the grand scale or the collective stage, world stage, but even more so on our own, on ourselves. It seems that I had Jason Estes on the other day, and he talked about the using the connotation false prophet. And I said, well, what does that mean? He said these are basically individuals that are moving the ball up the field or trying to gain something from a false place. That these things are starting to get really separated. People talk about the great divide, but I'm actually seeing this in people. I'm seeing it in myself. I'm seeing it in groups where the false, what is not true, because it can only be what's true and what's not true. So what is true and what is not true is just really becoming more and more obvious, especially over the last during this last month. Do you see that continuing as well?
Very much so, yes. In order for us to discover truth, we need to know what is not true. And so there have always been the false gurus, the false prophets, the false kings, if you like. They rise, and when we see them, we know what is true. So from the point of view of being in that forest next to the tree, it looks like chaos. And it's very confusing, because from that point of view, in the egoic place, One doesn't know what is true. One doesn't know what is false. One doesn't know who is speaking truth. One doesn't know who to follow. But that's when you look outside into the forest. When you go within and trust self, that's the journey to truth. We will be seeing more and more of this. And we are seeing in this reality right now the complete reflection of what we are and what we expect. Yeah. If we're confused, we will see confusion. If we are sovereign, we will see sovereignty. If we are living within truth, we will experience truth. But the thing is, we're so multidimensional as beings that we are seeing a multidimensional reality. And so when we understand the multidimensional itself and how that applies to us, then we can put that into practice when we look at our outside reality. But it doesn't work in a linear sense. There is no end point to it. So one can actually sit there and think, I've got it. I've done it. I know who I am. I know who all these parts of me are. And I'm reflecting this in my life, in the wider reality, and everything is ordered. And I really know the answers to the questions I've always been seeking. And it's a lovely place to be. And you find that place, and then bang, something unexpected comes up. And you think, what do I do with this? What's this here for? It's yet another unraveling. So that's the journey. That's the journey.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. I have often said, the higher your soul goes, the higher the ego goes. And we do receive a lot of powerful information, and that can be a big challenge to, the ego. I mean, as far as I know, it's still around. I don't know that it's going to go away. In fact, I consider it the universe's great equalizer, but certainly its role can be different. But yeah. Now, as far as it's interesting talking to you, because we can talk about these subjects that we talked about earlier from an energetic standpoint. I think that it's something that needs to be talked about for a couple of reasons. And one is because I think I see a lot of people in the circles we run in, they get tied to the potential outcome, or tied to something that in one form or fashion is an external savior, be it a financial reset, or whether it be some kind of further justice, or whatever the case is. I also see a lot of psyops running out there that always has that carrot on the stick. I consider that to be conditioning, programming. So it's a fine line. I guess at the end of the day, we've all got to make up our own mind. But insofar as I think the more talked about topics, disclosure, reset, tribunals, justice, or whatever you want to call it, in terms of the things that we all know have been going on. Do you see this all being something or things that we don't really need to spend a lot of time on, because as we change internally, they will follow suit? Or do you see these as things that we do if we feel that we should speak out about and get involved in?
That's a really good question. Ultimately, it is the first that you said. We don't really need to involve ourselves with these things, because everything will fall into place when we take our alignment. But when we look at that in the real world, in the third dimension, it really depends where we are as an individual and what our role is here. Everybody has come in for a reason, if you like, into incarnation. And whilst there is a global mission that we are all collectively moving towards, there are individual missions as well. So some individuals are here, and for their best interests, it's not a good idea for them to heavily involve themselves in these details, because their role is needed elsewhere. Their focus needs to be elsewhere. But there are other individuals who are, if you like, teaching about the compartmentalization within the dimensions, and they have to sort of dissect these details. Those people would very much need to focus on these details in order to teach about them and in order to integrate them. If the focus is there for an aligned intention, and that intention fits the overall goal, which is the ascension of humanity and this planet, then it's okay to spend hours and hours and hours focusing on those details if that is your intention. But it would be done from a non-egoic point of view. Not saying that the ego is bad. The ego is a very, very good thing, and we don't want to get rid of it, but it is under control. That's not necessarily a particularly helpful thing to say either, but it's in place. So those people would be able to focus on these details with the ego self in place. But if you have individuals that have become obsessed with the details to the point of resistance of anything outside of that particular outcome that they envisage, then they are down in that forest. They're not able to climb that tree and take that overview. They are lost to that overview. They've lost themselves in the details. Having said that, sometimes one needs to lose oneself within the details, within the pointless dramas, in order to discover what it is like to be free from the details and the pointless dramas. So even when you are immersed in that which loses you, that is how you find yourself again. So there is no cut and dried answer to that question. It depends on the individual. On a general level, I would say no, do not involve yourself in those details. Take the surrender. And on a collective level, if you want to look at the collective awakened humanity, the ones that are fifth dimensional, those individuals are not concerning themselves with details unless they are teaching about them in their various way. Those individuals understand about surrender. They understand how to focus on what they want, but they're not focusing on arrests of individuals, deaths of individuals. They're not focusing on revenge. They are focusing on evolution and all that entails, growth, expansion, and basically the returning to the divine blueprint that we are supposed to be returning to. That is our ultimate desire. When they focus there, everything else falls into place, and they know that. So the answer to that question is predominantly no, but it would depend on the individual.
Yeah. And then, and so those individuals, they understand that, you know, what they're doing by service to self, which is simultaneous with service to others, really, that alignment, you know, from the core of the universe, which is ourselves, that takes care of everything. So there's no, but now you're saying that there's that fifth dimensional wave, and then there's that truther wave, which is fourth dimensional moving into fifth, right? And you feel like that number is a pretty good number, like a 1 to 2, could be 1 to 2 billion. That's very.
When you're looking at everyone that has a level of awakening, so we're looking at anyone that has taken some aspect of themselves, some aspect of their consciousness or being outside of third dimensional reality and has touched upon a higher dimension. When you look at all those individuals, it's very difficult to say the number because it fluctuates all the time. It's a heartbeat. So you could say, oh, we're at 1 billion, and 2 seconds later it could be 2 billion, and then 2 seconds later it could be 1.5 billion. It is a moving heartbeat, but that's roughly where I would say we are when we're looking at everyone outside of third dimensional awareness. If you want to look at the individuals that are in a state of integration, or at least understand what integration means and understand what unity means. And there are many who understand unity, who have moved to unity, who exist within the fifth dimension, and yet they reject separation, they reject the third dimension. So they're not integrated either. That's not a bad thing. It's just the way that they have gone. So they need to come back and integrate the third dimensional self to understand separation. Separation is a bad thing. Separation is a good thing. You see, it's both. And a lot of people from unity are in resistance to separation, but they have discovered unity. So when we look at the waves, the amount of individuals who have found the core balance and are in that trilocational into multilocational consciousness, then the number is less with those individuals, much less. However, they are the individuals who have the cellular structure of their bodies have a wider wavelength, almost as though they radiate, well, not almost as though, they do radiate a signal. And that signal goes much, much further. So although they are lesser in number, the frequency, the vibration, the collective heartbeat that they give out as a smaller group is wider than all the other groups on the planet. That's an extraterrestrial signal, if you will. They are the extraterrestrials. They're not terrestrial anymore, even though they might be terrestrial physically. They have moved beyond what we have known since the beginning of known history as human. They have moved into the true organic human, which is more like what we would perceive as extraterrestrial, because it's extra dimensional, ultra dimensional, and they are much fewer in number but greater in frequency. And they're the ones that are controlling. They're not really controlling. They are the ones that are in the pure creation. And that's where we're all following. We're all following these individuals into 2019, because every single individual that moves into a new vibrational place, a new discovery, a new cellular configuration, the minute they go there, that geometric information is available as a code for everyone else to follow. They're the map makers. They pave the way for the others to follow. And that's what we're doing. We're rolling in this ripple effect, following in the footsteps of those that have gone before. It's difficult for those that are paving the way. They're the explorers. They're the map makers. And then they create the path for the others.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I love what you said too about those that kind of get out there into the fourth and the fifth, and they forget about the third, and they've got to go back and integrate it, because separation is separation. I take a hit every now and then. I have a saying that hashtag the human is the hero, and what I mean by that is we're 99% conscious with this human consciousness. Or 99% of the time, with what is less than 1% of our consciousness, it's got to be pretty important. I feel like that the human has to be, you can't have ascension without having alignment from the core of this vessel, which I consider a biological Merkaba. You cannot have alignment with our multidimensionality. It just doesn't work. And I love what you said, because I kind of see it the same way when you said, well, you can't leave the 3D over there because that's separation. You got to bring it all with you. Could you add anything to that? Or, do you agree or disagree?
Yes, completely agree with everything you said. And it's very good to say that the physical body is a biological Merkaba. When you're in that balance and that integration, that's exactly what it is. The third dimensional realm, if you like, and all of us within it are as far away from source as one can be when one holds individual consciousness. That is, from one point of view, that's really, really bad. That's really, really awful, because we're so far away from home. But from another point of view, it's really, really good. It's really, really wonderful. It's a fantastic opportunity, because every single experience that we have is sent back through that broadcast to original source. So original source takes in all of this information. Now that's already happened, because it's all in the past from our point of view. So therefore, we are majorly contributing to the existence of all and everything. And also, it is actually literal. It's not just a metaphor, it's literal. When we regain our memories, our multidimensional memories, and we move into either a death experience or an ascension experience with awareness, with memories intact, we add to this field of intelligence, this this pure source field of intelligence. Our memories, our entire makeup, when it's cohesive, goes back into that field and becomes part of that field. Now, the fabric within that field is what is used to make matter. It's antimatter fabric, it's plasma, antimatter, plasma, fire, and the fabric is used to make matter. So it's the fabric used to build universes and stars and planets. But that fabric is made of our memories, our cohesive memories. And we can't do that without being physical, because we have to lose our memories in order to regain them, create cohesiveness within those memories. And then that is what is called individualization. When we individualize, we then take individual memory into that field, expand it, and that fabric creates universes and stars and dark energy and dark matter and gravity. That's what we do. You know, I read a statement earlier by someone on Facebook who said, people don't seem to realize how insignificant we are in the universe. You know, compared to an extraterrestrial that has the ability to travel to another solar system, they are as a god as we are a locust, I think he said.
Yeah.
Bless him, right? But that is so far from the truth. It's the farthest from the truth that you can go, but it's okay, because that person needs to go so far away from the truth in order to come back, to boomerang back, to find it. We are more significant than most of us on the planet realize. Very few of us are aware that we create stars and that we create gravity and that we create dark matter and that we create universes. We are creators. So when you say about 2019 becoming a year of true creation and expansion, well, that's why it's the year of sovereignty, because within our sovereignty, we become aware of what we are and who we are and what we are here to do. And that awareness is sitting there in the year 2019 and into 2020, and it's just bubbling up. So there's all these epiphanies going on in these individuals who are coming to this realization, watching shows like this. They're all out there, or just having dreams themselves, and their own source and their own guides are showing them these things, because the higher guidance can't come in and just say, hey, guess what? You create gravity, you create stars. You do it through your memory, individualization. They can't do that because that's against free will. We have to start thinking about these things ourselves, thinking, I wonder how stars are made. I wonder if we are part of the building of the cosmos. I wonder, do you think that might be true? I wonder. And then you are creating an invitation, an inner portal for that higher guidance, which is the memory field. That's what it is, to come in and activate the DNA or communicate with you or bring back your knowings or whatever word you want to use. So you create an invitation to yourself to become aware. And what actually happens within the DNA structure folds back on itself to know itself. So when you know yourself, your DNA is knowing itself. And vice versa, when the DNA folds back to know itself and it changes configuration geometrically, then you know yourself, because you and the DNA are one. And the DNA is the cosmos, and it is everything. That's why our memories, when they are cohesive, they must be intact and individual. That's why you need the human body to do it and the third dimension to do it. When that happens, then that is when creation itself knows itself. That's why people say that Source, or God, if you like, is learning through us. That's a difficult one for people to understand, because they'll say, well, why is Source learning through us? I thought Source was all-knowing. It's about the configuration of our cellular structure. And we become the architect, we become gods, if you like, because we then build universes and planets and solar systems. At the moment, we are at the baby stages of doing this collectively. Yeah. But in our future trajectory, we will be doing that, because those things that we see outside of ourselves as stars and planets and universes, they are us. That's what we are. They are our bodies.
Well, and that expansion
our celestial bodies.
Yeah, that expansion of source is done at the ground level, you know. And so back to the gentleman's comment on Facebook, you know, it's the other way around. I think we're actually, if we can put it in that context, which is hard to do, but yeah, the humans are hero. I mean, they're actually looking at us going, oh my God, look what this species has done. I mean, they've come from what, you know, to this point. And this is where we get into this 2019 year of sovereignty. So correct me if I'm wrong, but now what you're saying is sovereignty is a much more expansive word, the way you're using it, than from the traditional semantics of the human language.
Yes.
What you're talking about is actually stepping into our power, actually stepping into conscious living as a multidimensional being and applying it into this 3D, 4D, 5D daily experience, which based on the interactions that we have moment by moment, these are the very things that we do that create gravity, that create galaxies and planets. And so what you're saying is this sovereignty is where we're actually taking responsibility for ourselves and for the magic and the alchemy that we are. Is that?
Yes, all of those things. We become a true sovereign. So we become a true king or a true queen or a princess or a prince, whatever archetype you want to take. We become a true sovereign. And I use the analogy, or rather the nine use the analogy of the royal, because we do activate the royal code. And it is actually a code within. The manifestation of that collectively is the indigo revolution and the indigo individual, the indigo being royal, very similar color, if you like. When you look into the DNA, clairvoyantly and psychically, when it activates, there is light. The DNA is light. It's this like liquid plasma light, and these DNA filaments sort of move out into this new configuration. And there's a reflection that occurs because, as I said, the DNA folds back on itself to know itself. So the nine also call this the mirror effect. So if you're looking at the DNA folding back on itself and creating this reflection like this mirror effect, it reflects the light that it is, and that creates color. The nine call this the gemstone codes. This is where I talk about the emerald code, the emerald flame, the emerald frequency, the ruby, the blue sapphire. So the royal is the indigo code. So when I say you're becoming a true sovereign, you really are becoming royal. And what royal means, the true royal individual was an individual in physical form, if you like, but also in non-physical form that serves the whole. The royal is not one, the sovereign is not one to stand and ask for others to bow down to them, give them all their money, and if you're lucky, I might let you have a bit for yourself, but I'm going to keep most of it. That's not how the true royal is. The true royal is completely in service to the whole, to the other, and they're in service through the fact that they hold the royal code, they hold the activation. They're one of the individuals I talked about who have this broadcast signal. And that frequency broadcasts out the map makers. They create the new geometry. They create the pathways for others to follow, for others to catch. And that code, because it's able to fold back on itself and know itself and replicate itself through this mirror effect, when, say, we've got someone called Jane who holds the royal code, and then Janet stands next to her who doesn't hold the royal code, but she is fully open and cohesive and ready to catch it, that royal code just is replicated within her. Just like if you have a guitar and you play a string of one guitar, the other string on the other guitar will vibrate. It's the same thing, known, I think, as cymatics as well. So that will jump to the other person. That's what's happening. That's what's happening across the whole planet right now. That's becoming sovereign. And putting that into practice in third dimensional terms, it is knowing that you are the fully empowered individual within your life. It's not that you don't care about anyone else. You do, you love them, but your own sovereignty, your own power, your own knowing takes precedence.
Yeah.
Above all things. You can ask other people for their opinion and for their assistance and for their help, and you can bounce ideas backwards and forwards with them, but the ultimate decision, the ultimate knowing comes from you. And you will find that if you follow the advice of someone else, or you follow the decision made by someone else, and you're doing it out of a sense of duty or because that you think that person might know more than you, you will find that things don't work out for you. Even if that person is right for them, they're not living your life. They're not living your reality, and it may not be right for you. So unless you fully, resonate with that person's advice, always take their advice and come back to what feels right for you. And it is very much a feeling, and it's a leap of faith, because sometimes you can have everyone around you telling you one thing and saying to you, Todd, you're wrong, mate. This is what you got to do. And you can have 100 people telling you that, and still inside it doesn't feel right. That's because it doesn't matter how many other people tell you what's right. The sovereign one is the one who makes the decision for himself.
That's right.
And it's coming from the DNA, from the cellular level, from the cosmic level, the celestial level. It is the level of the light body. That's what all that means about the light body, the rainbow body of light, all of those new age metaphors or religious metaphors. They are all saying the same thing, which is we are coming back into a configuration as a human race that we lost, if you like, that we had taken from us, or whatever metaphor you wish to use. We are moving back into that configuration. And in 2019, the year of sovereignty, is when this really becomes realized on a large scale.
And I think that's going back to what we talked about at the top of the show, what Jason Estes brought up with the false prophet thing, which again takes on a wider, as our awareness grows, takes on a wider meaning. And that is quite simply that as people are gaining their sovereignty, this is not a separation thing. This is not a good or bad thing. This is just a reality as part of our evolution. And that is that they're going to fall away from giving their power up, because we're talking about empowering ourselves versus disempowering. And even in that disempowering paradigm of the yogis and the gurus, it was necessary. I mean, it was part of our evolution. So I totally get what you're saying. I love the words that you're using. I wanted to ask you too, we talk a lot about, and again, the language is changing. I mean, what we knew is, if I said I love you 5 years ago and I say I love you today, these are two different things. Love is different. Our awareness is expanding and everything expands with it. But there does seem to be more and more evidence of the power of the Trinity. And when I say that, I'm talking about, we can talk twin flames or soulmates or whatever words you want to use, divine conscious unions. But it just seems that in this grid, the grid I say is the most important one, which is the human hybrid soul grid, where we hold etherical hands across the globe, that there seems to be a powerful thing taking place in terms of these divine couples. And again, going back to your method of talking about some of this stuff on the world stage, I'm speaking from an energetic sense. It doesn't always have to look the same in the literal. But do you see partnerships of some sort or another becoming more and more, or gaining more and more of a foothold in this grid as we expand into sovereignty?
Yeah, that's another really big one for 2019. The year of the coming together in these conscious partnerships, this twin flame union, this divine marriage, this sacred hand fasting, that is occurring energetically. And when we're looking at the twin flame within, we are looking at that bilocational consciousness, that two world split, that bifurcation of timelines. And then the Trinity is again the twin flame conscious couple, and the creation that they make between them becomes a third entity. They become a triad. And that's the same thing as trilocational consciousness and the trifurcation of timeline. So that's another big one for me personally in my life. I've got 4 weddings in the family next year, so I'm aware of the metaphoric meaning of that. And these are all people who have all been together for different amounts of time, all choosing without any kind of conferring with anyone else, all choosing to tie the knot in 2019. My poor mother, she said, "What are you all doing?" That's just very metaphoric for the global picture, the sacred hand fasting and the sacred coming together. And that's more than just the couples. That is the coming together of the male and the female balance. And that, as I've said many times before, that does not necessarily mean a genetic male and a genetic female.
Yeah.
It can be bisexual couples and homosexual couples. It's the energetic frequency of the left brain and the right brain. And what that is balance and integration and sovereignty. It's the same thing. So you could say that 2019 is the year of the twin flames. That would be another way of explaining this. But going further to 2019 is the year of the Holy Trinity, the trine, the triad. And we had a very big awareness of that back in August last year when we had this Lion's Gate. There was a very large seed point awareness amongst the aware humanity of that Trinity and of that trine. Even if individuals didn't necessarily know what that meant to them, they were seeing that everywhere. You say you've been seeing numbers a lot and you're seeing 222. Well, that again is a reflection of the divine coupling, the twin flame, the 2-2, 2 ones, the coming together of oneness, the working with the higher divine, the pillar of light. You can't move into sovereignty and build your architecture without the pillar of light. That is the very first foundation, and that's the divine one. So there are many, many ways of analyzing all of these things that are occurring. And really, I think with 2019, it's a case of 2018 and 17 also looked like chaos. And it was chaos to many of us, even those who were awakened. In 2019, it's like we're going to analyze the chaos. We're going to place the chaos. We're going to integrate it. We are now drawing back to us the compartmentalized holographic aspects and taking them in to become more whole with us. So we've become sovereign as an individual. We're now becoming sovereign as a group, and understanding that the group is the individual and that the individual and the group are one. So it is very much a balance between separation and unity, individualization and oneness. 2019 has the understanding and awareness of all of those. That's not to say that they haven't been there before, because there are individuals on this planet who have known all these things and lived all these things for a long time. But when you look at the collective consciousness that's going through an ascension process, when you look at it, if you like, as an ascension cycle where the majority are, then 2019 is a really profound year of enlightenment. And that continues and ripples through to 2020 and 2021 as well. So the next 3 years are really, really significant and very fast tracking. It's almost like in the next 3 years, we're packing in what we would normally pack in as a planetary society, it may take us 100 years to do that we're doing in 3. The evolution aspect.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's. Do you think at some point, it sounds like it, some point in the near future, we're actually collectively going to, get to the point where we actually realize how our conscious thoughts are creating really instantaneously, I guess is the way I'd put it. Obviously, a lot of this stuff is not put into the mainstream.
No.
But it just seems like this type of communication, consciousness, knowledge, whatever you want to call it, telepathically is transferred, and it I don't know. We may already be past the tipping point. It seems like, but I like what you said, that the 2 or 3 years, well, we're getting 100 years of evolution, and I think that's very, very accurate. And I think I want to make the point too, people, because I've brought this up before, and I'm not big on labels, and they always talk about the divine marriage inside, and that's the only one that there is, and that's okay. All I'm trying to say is in the question that I had posed to Magenta, is that yes, of course, we've had that divine marriage inside. So many of us have, and now it's being externalized. And where 2 or more gather, and so to speak, there's a lot of power in that. I call it the Holy Triad, and I think you're saying the same thing. I think this is something we're going to see more and more of, and the mathematics side of it is like nothing we ever, nothing that was in the old paradigm where 1 + 1 = 2. This turns into that whole 3, 6, 9 free energy, free flow that Tesla talked about. So I just want to make that distinction. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, another thing, I try not to get off on too much trivial stuff, but I thought with your experience, it might be good to ask also, because I think more people are going to be experiencing certain things. There's so much expectation, if you will, of spaceships landing and this and that. Morgan and I have had some experiences together when we come together, and including materialization of Star Family in the room with us and that type of thing. I don't get too caught up in it anymore. I just take it for what it is and accept it and love it. I think more and more people will be experiencing this stuff. Do you feel the same? Do you feel like that the other dimensions are going to be showing themselves to the point where, even though it's not in the mainstream, it's becoming common knowledge and a daily activity, basically?
It's really strange. I mean, it's not. I should have expected it, really. This morning, I mean, I had a very profound extraterrestrial dream last night, incredibly in depth. So I woke up this morning and I asked the 9 to work with me to analyze some of the images and the messages within the dream. And they started to talk to me, and I thought, I need to write this down. So I brought forward a new channeling, which should be uploaded within the next 24 hours, depending on how quickly Daniel gets it done. And basically, every question you've asked me today in this interview is all in that channeling that came through this morning. Everything. So, yes, the extraterrestrial connection is very big in 2019. Now, it seems to be, according to the 9, that how this comes in is through the dream time. And it's deeper than what we would think it is. It's not really a case of, we're humans and they're extraterrestrials from other planets, and we're going to start meeting them and talking to them in our dreams. Yes, it is that, but it's more about, what's your relationship with these extraterrestrial beings? Why are you connecting with them? The reason for that is they are just like us. They're just on a different evolutionary path, on a different evolutionary timeline. We are going through a process that some of them have been through, others haven't. So they are wanting to observe us. Others don't want it to happen, so they want it to stop. You've got all these different energies within the extraterrestrial consciousness. And we are becoming galactic beings. We're moving into a galactic society. The nine do go into it quite deeply in this channeling. And as I said, I want this up really ideally before the new year, or certainly by New Year's Day. But this appears to be something that's going to be bigger and bigger next year in 2019. Because what's happening within us is a change within our inner terrain. So our cellular structure is changing. It's changing from carbon to crystalline. On a physical level, that might be very easy to say, oh, the DNA is changing from carbon to crystalline, and you are going through an alchemical change and you are becoming light. But we have to go through the experience of it. And in my dream, and I'm fully aware that we're moving from carbon to crystalline. I've been aware of this a long time, and I've taught this and spoken about this from the teachings of the nine. And in my dream, this extraterrestrial being, or several of them, and they didn't look that different to us, really. They were human-ish. And they leant down into this pool of water that was by me, and they just moved their hand over this pond, this water, and pulled out this huge crystalline structure. And I remember in the dream being shocked and afraid because I did not recognize the structure. It was not part of Earth's terrain. It was not part of the familiarity of the carbon-based terrain. So I am shocked and saying, what on earth is that? I'm frightened, not in terror, but I'm running away and hiding and drawing the curtains, and I don't want these extraterrestrials near me because they're changing the terrain. It wasn't until I woke up and analyzed the dream and the meaning of the dream with the nine. This is what is happening. Our terrain is changing within, so we are changing, and it's blissful and lovely. Of course, it's nice to see a piece of water magically turned into a gorgeous crystal. But when you're actually faced with it in the real world, it's very, very different from everything we have known. So this is happening on an inner level. The carbon-based structure that we've lived with for lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, if we are looking at reincarnation as being part of our linear trajectory. Some of us don't have that in the same way. But, you know, on a collective level, we do. All of a sudden, we have these new structures. And they're beautiful and they're full of light, but they are new and they are different. So we're going to have reactions. We aren't letting go of ego. It's okay to be reactive to these crystalline structures that are occurring. And when you take that into our individual life, we're going to be behaving differently. We're going to have different types of people come into our lives and different scenarios and different downloads and different messages. And when we look at that globally, the global terrain, the political terrain, the actual physical terrain of the planet itself, it's all changing into a new structure. And while it's lovely to embrace and it's what we want, we need to accept that we will go through normal reactions, which is why it takes time. The higher reality, if you will, it is not going to shock us. That is why UFOs, great big, beautiful plasma rainbow light ships, are not going to land in our front garden on a global level. But we will have individual meetings in many different ways. And it may not just be through dreams. It may be through something that appears more solid than dreams, but really it doesn't matter. The dream time reality and the waking reality are one and the same. Our body's asleep and our body's awake, but the energetic frequency and the communication with the Galactic Society is the same. That's the telepathy. So yes, it's a big part of next year and 2020 and 2021.
So that part's a big part. Sovereignty, Trinity, the twin flame, love component, if you want to call it that. Is there anything else that we can look for in 2019?
Well, there is the darker stuff as well. I mean, if you imagine a garden and you want to grow lots of beautiful green grass and some wonderful flowers, So that's wonderful, and we want those green, we want that green grass and those lovely flowers. But how do we start? We're going to plow the field. We're going to turn the soil inside out in order for it to be able to grow. So, you know, that side of it is there as well. There is going to be some big upheavals as well,
which is reflective of the internal inside of all of us. Either it's happened or it's going to happen to. Yeah.
Everything. I mean, somebody asked me, is Trump being president? Could it be a reflection of our collective consciousness? And I replied, everything on the world stage is a reflection of our collective consciousness. And our collective consciousness is in the state of evolution that it is in because of what is occurring on the world stage. It's a two-way movement.
Yeah. It's like you said, it's the individual's attached. I mean, it's one and the same.
It's about living in harmony with our environment. Our environment and us, we are one. We are not confined to this physical body. We are in our environment. Did I just hear a cockerel crow in your...
Oh, yeah. There's a whole bunch of them out there.
Have you got cockerels? Oh.
No. They're all over the island.
Oh, really? How lovely.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just, they're outside your house.
Yeah, they're all out there. They're all over the island, everywhere.
Wow.
When I arrived here,
it's very interesting because the cockerel crows at dawn, and what we're talking about right now is a new dawn. The cockerel crowing is the waking, the sound we wake to. That's the cockerel crows at dawn. That's the sound we wake to. It's the new beginning, and we're going into a new beginning, a new year, a rebirth moment, and we're talking about that right now. So when you do open up a conversation, you are creating a magical event. You are creating a ritual. You and I are creating a magical ritual with all of those who listen to us. And so we would take note of any sounds that would come into that circle and look at what that may mean. So, yeah.
That's right. The universe is constantly communicating with us. All right?
Yeah.
And I love what you said. Yeah, because it is part of this. Because they weren't doing it. It's well beyond the physical dawn here.
Yeah.
So I don't know why they started doing it right now. One other thing I want to get to before we sign off is just energy in and of itself. One of the things that I find really intriguing about you is that you don't talk a lot about lifestyle. You seem to, either between the lines, or maybe I've actually heard you say it or write it, but you seem to really attack, that's not the right word, approach everything from an energetic standpoint. Everything is the same energy. You either buy into that 100% or you don't buy into that 100%. I've seen it in my own life, especially in the last 12 months, the conversion of energy. We can call it alchemy, magic, whatever we want to call it. But I just noticed that about you, and it intrigued me. Because, and I'm not taking anything away from anybody, because I've got a lot of friends that advocate, what we might call healthy lifestyles or this or that or whatever. But it seems to me that everything is the same energy. And we can either begin to approach it that way, or we can continue to delay it. I'm one to try to, the straightest point or the quickest way between 2 points is a straight line. So, what are your thoughts on energy, and do you think we'll see the expansion of ourselves as energy beings or conscious energy beings this year?
I mean, absolutely. Everything you said is correct, and everything is the same energy, different creations and manifestations of that energy. And really, for those who have already understood that, 2019 is a continuation for them, because those who truly understand that energy are in that 0 point field. There isn't any passing of time for them. even if they're embracing the linear reality, which if they're in integration, they will understand about the movements of time, but they will also understand about 0 point. And therefore, they're not going to necessarily see each year or each month as having specific new codes for them. They will be very much within that 0 point where all years and all time is one. So for those people, it is a continuation. For the people coming into this as a realization in 2019, that's where I see more people coming into the understanding of that energy. But you talk about lifestyle, and that is very important also. The lifestyle we live is that which gives us the ability to become integrated. It's no good looking at everything as being one energy and looking at unification if we are living a lifestyle that does not honor those around us, our environment, our families, our pets, and our own body. So it is very important to follow a healthy lifestyle that will be individual and subjective to each person, but it is important to use the tools we have around us. Although I don't talk about lifestyle that much, it's very much part of it. And living healthily, that doesn't mean you can't get ill. That is, another issue. We each have our own healing journeys to go through. But utilizing the tools around us, such as healthy food and various forms of exercise or meditation. So yes, our lifestyle and the way we live is very important, and the way that we deal with scenarios in our own families, in our own communities, that's just the microcosm. And the healthy lifestyle and the way that we bring the body into alignment is very needed. It's a foundation. So for people out there who are doing regular yoga, or who go swimming, or go down the gym, or go running, or people who are raw foodists, or people who are paleo, and people who are vegan, anyone, conscious, aware individuals that are living sustainably, that reject things like plastics and want to buy biodegradable and sustainable clothing, and all of those things are part of this journey as well. All of these things are part of being in alignment, and we don't come to every awareness at the same time. That's more of the details within the linear journey. So some people might be fantastic with food but have no idea about textiles and sustainability. Others might have been working with sustainable living and haven't done the diet, or haven't done the exercise, or aren't being creative, or whatever it may be. So that's all part of the human journey in the third dimension on Earth as well. It's all part of it. The point is, really, when it comes to lifestyle, what can actually halt your progress is judgment. One person says, oh, this is the way to live. You have to be vegan and you have to do yoga. And if you're, going down the gym and you're eating meat, then you haven't got it right. That's a judgment. You can't make a judgment for someone else. Animal cruelty and everything else is another philosophical issue that has validation. We need to learn as a society to embrace one another and accept our differences. There are many paths to integration and ascension and enlightenment. There's only one path, and there are many paths. So judgment needs to be not taken away, because sometimes we do have to make a judgment when someone has moved outside of a boundary that is going to ripple and affect the whole of Earth and beyond Earth. Sometimes we have to make a judgment in a very fair way, fair justice way. But to actually judge others for their lifestyle, that can actually be a bit of an issue within all these different health regimes. But when you take that away, all of these things are tools to enlightenment. You can find higher awareness through foods, through herbs, through clothing, through meditation, through exercise, through walking, through crystals. So yes, all part of it.
Yeah. Dr. Joe says to thine own self be true. And I think you said something earlier that, well, and and the thing is too, it's not just there's different paths on the one path, but number one, they're all converging, and number two, there's different speeds as to when you get there. But number three, if you're focused on somebody else, you're not focused on yourself. Yeah. and that's probably the best thing we can do for ourselves and for the collective. So what is Magenta Pixie? And I must say also, out of the utmost respect, and Daniel, because I know he's an integral part of what you do. What will y'all be getting into in the next few weeks in January? Do you have anything planned? Anything you're coming out with?
It's funny you mentioned Daniel. My father, my stepfather, actually said to me, "Do you think you'd be able to do what you're doing without Daniel?" I said, "No," because of the unique way that he understands what I'm doing when I bring the Nines messages forward, whether it's a video or a book. He understands the terminology and the philosophies, but he looks at it from a very, very different perspective. So he can come in with the presentation of that. So yes, we do work as a team. Yes, we do have things planned. I mean, we are going through our own sacred hand fasting in March. And when I talk about the divine marriage earlier, that does not mean you have to actually sign a contract and get legally married. That's a whole other issue. And understanding that the ritual of the marriage, the hand fasting, the joining, and the signing of the contract itself are two different things. And you can choose to merge them. But what's happened on this planet is the contract and the ritual have been bound together, so that you don't choose your own ritual. You follow the ritual and the contract that is binding by the law of the system. That is all changing. So what we are doing is going through a hand fasting, and we have not made a decision fully yet on the signing of the contract. And if we do sign a contract, we will probably go for the civil partnerships are being opened in Great Britain for heterosexual couples, which is a completely new way of signing a contract. It's a whole new, more fair, more equal contract. So that's probably what we will go for. So we have that in March. I've got a few talks coming up, but mostly I'm formulating material at the moment for my next book, and it's beginning to take shape, is what I will say. That's where my focus is, really, is my next book. But it's not going to be ready. I don't know when, but it's
well, there's no linear, so it doesn't matter.
No, but that's where my main focus is, really. Oh, and these weddings, personally, my sister's getting married, then and both my sons are. So we've got 4 weddings in the family.
You're going to be busy. You're going to be busy. Well,
yes.
I really enjoyed it. I appreciate you very much, and Daniel too. And I look forward to future collaborations. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing space with us.
Thank you, Todd.
All right. You take care. We got 500 comments, 200 people in the house, and it's been another successful show. This could very well be our last show at this format. We'll be coming out with more about that later. We'll have our own SoulogyNetwork.org community. It is not about me. It's not about Morgan. It's about putting everybody on one URL and having, people having the availability to go in and find what they need in a multi-channel format. So looking forward to getting this off the ground. It's a little bit scary, but, this is 2019. It's the year of sovereignty. So we're going to give it hell. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Peace out.